This is huge.
Big, huge smile under here.
Unbelievable.
Yeah!
Holy cow.
Oh my gosh, yo! I didn't know you do this.
That's amazing.
Welcome to Southside, and welcome to one of our favorite times of year, Be Rich. Now, if you're new today, welcome, but you might be wondering, what is that? Well, don't worry. By the end of today, you're gonna know all about Be Rich and why we do it. What I can tell you is it is an extraordinary wave of generosity across our communities. We here at Southside are one of 76 churches across 20 states in 5 countries that come together to give, to serve, and to love our communities and the work that they are doing there. It's going to be fun, it's going to be inspiring, and we want to make sure that you don't miss a minute of it. So stick around for today's message. Our teaching pastor, Andy Stanley, is going to be explaining all about Be Rich and why we do it. You can also go to our website, southside.org/be rich, to find out all the details for our local partners here on the south side of Atlanta. But first, let's sing together.
People come together, strangers, neighbors, our blood is one. And children of generations, of every nation, of kingdom come. So don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. Take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Swing wide, all you heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation darkness fades to new beginnings as we lift our eyes to the hope beyond. Our creation waits with an expectation to declare the reign of the Lord our God. We will not be moved when the earth gives way, for the risen one is overcome. And for every fear is an empty grave, for the risen one is overcome. Now the silence breaks in the name of Jesus, as the heavens cry, let the earth respond. All creation shout with the voice of triumph to declare the reign of the Lord our God. We will not be moved when the earth gives way, for the risen one is overcome. And for every fear there's an empty grave, for the risen one is overcome. Hey. You've overcome. You've overcome. He shall reign forever. Strongholds now surrender, for the Lord our God has overcome. Who can be against us? Jesus our defender. He is Lord and he has overcome. He shall reign forever. Strongholds now surrender, for the Lord our God has overcome. Who can be against us? Jesus our defender. He is Lord and he has overcome. We will not be moved when the earth gives way, for the risen one is overcome. And for every fear there's an empty grave, for the risen one is overcome. We will not be moved when the earth gives way, for the risen one is overcome. And for every fear there's an empty grave, for the risen one is overcome. Hey. You have
Heading out on our own with our hope in the clouds, and we're starting to see that we're onto something. Feel it coming, we'll keep running, nothing in our way, and we got no reason to wait. Let the journey take you where it wants to. We'll continue to find our way through anything we face. We got what it takes. Here we go. All we need is an open road and a chance to see a never-ending world that's beautiful. Here we go, with the sunlight on our skin. It's a brand new day. begins. Every step, writing stories that seek to be read, taking hold of the moment as we discover every color filled with wonder. Now we finally see we got everything we need. Here we go. All we need is an open road and a chance to see a never-ending world that's beautiful. Here we go with the sunlight on our skin. It's a brand new day. It's ours to take and we will let it in. This is where the adventure begins. And now, on our own with our hope in the clouds, we're starting to see that we're onto something. Feel it coming now. Here we go. All we need is an open road and a chance to see a never-ending world that's beautiful. Here we go with the sunlight on our skin. It's a brand new day. It's ours to take and we will let it in. This is where the adventure begins.
Cool. Hey, I want to welcome all of our Atlanta area churches in Alabama, churches in Georgia, actually churches all across the country. Those of you who are watching from clubhouses, up in the mountains and living rooms, joining us for Be Rich and kicking off this important season for us. And for those of you, this is your first time to participate with us in Be Rich. We hope it's not the last time. And we hope that maybe you meet somebody in the process of these next few weeks that becomes a close friend, a best friend, and that you actually intersect with an organization that maybe you've never even heard of that's doing fantastic things right there in your own backyard. About 25 years ago, Sandra and I were young parents. We had 2 kids at the time, and so it was about 10:30 at night one night. And you know, when you're a young parent, you don't know what you're doing, and you know you don't know what you're doing, but you act like you know what you're doing. So about 10 o'clock at night, in one of the baby monitors, we hear this terrible coughing and choking and coughing and choking. So we run upstairs, and it's Garrett. He's our middle now, but he was our youngest then. He was about 18 months old, and he's just coughing and coughing and coughing, scaring us to death. So we pick him up. We kind of do all the normal stuff, and we realize that between coughing, he's having a hard time breathing. And now we're like, freaked out. So we call 911. And I know that this is protocol, so I don't need an explanation, but it is kind of odd when you call 911 for a medical emergency and a giant fire truck pulls up. You're like, oh no, they sent the wrong, anyway. So the giant fire truck pulls up, and the whole neighborhood wakes up, and the EMTs get there, and, the standard's at the door, and I'm holding Garrett, and they come running, and they got all this cool equipment and their badges, and so professional, and they set it down. And so it was a woman, and she reaches for Garrett, and I did exactly what you did. I kind of turned away. I said, okay, before I trust you with my child, I got to know, and you know where this is going. Are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? Right? I mean, you're not just going to hand your baby to somebody if you don't know how they voted, right? No. I didn't care who they voted for. I didn't care about their politics. You know what I cared about? I cared about their competency because it was an emergency. And suddenly all that stuff that, was so important, it's like, oh, no, I just need somebody that can help. Now, as we launch Be Rich in this season, it feels like, and I think you would agree, that our nation is in a state of emergency again. Everything's politicized, everything's divided, whether it's climate, COVID, the vaccine. Is it 2 doses? Is it 3 doses? Is it no doses? Is it who knows, right? It's mask and CRT, and families are divided. My goodness, I've never seen more families divided than right now. Churches are divided. We've had to struggle with division. People in different parts of the city that see the world a different way, and they're sure I'm on the other side. In fact, my assistant, Diane, I don't think I've told you this, because and it's me, but it's just because I'm, the figurehead. I'm like the hood ornament. There's an engine, but I'm not the engine. I'm the hood ornament. That's what I tell our staff. You're the engine. I'm the hood ornament. But anyway, so I get all this criticism and all this this email and voicemails and all kind of stuff. People want to have appointments from both sides because both sides of any issue you can think of think I'm on the other side. So Diane, my assistant the other day, she said, I wish we could get these people together because they'd realize, oh, I thought he was on your side. Well, I thought he was on your side, right? Because that's the nature of the division. And it feels like, in fact, I was on a phone call the other day, and a wonderful woman who's been at our church for so many years, she said, Andy, it's never been so bad. I'm like, do you remember the Civil War? Okay, it's bad. Anyway. What's happened to our country? And then I get this, you get this too. You may have wondered this, is God judging America? Is God trying to get our attention? And as far as that last question goes, I don't think so, but I could be wrong. But one thing I do know, because Jesus told us so. What I know with certainty is that we have a responsibility. And when I say we, I mean Democrat Jesus followers and Republicans. Did you know Democrats can be Jesus followers? And Republican Jesus followers and Democrats, did you know? I know that Republican Jesus followers, Democrat Jesus followers, when I say we, black, brown, and white, all that are precious in his sight, Jesus followers, we have a responsibility. And our responsibility is not to try to figure out what God is doing at the macro level in the world or even in the nation. Actually, we kind of know, but we don't have to figure out and try to read the signs in the clouds. And our responsibility isn't even to solve all the world's problems. In fact, we may never agree on the solutions to the primary problems in our society or our country or the world. We may never agree on how to solve the world's problems. We may never agree even in terms of how to solve our community's problems. And I hate to bring this up, but since we're in church, some of us can't solve our own problems. Yeah, nervous laughter, right? It's like, I know what I would have done I know what I would do if I was the president. I would know what to do if I was the senator. I know what they need to do in Washington. Well, what about your kids? Well, that's a whole different thing. But, put me in charge of the country and, the world will be a better place, right? So I don't know what happened here. I'll just preach. I thought I was doing pretty good there without the notes. Maybe. Anyway, so here's something. You've noticed this as well. And I don't think this is any of you at any of our churches or anybody watching, because you're very sophisticated, smart people. We attract sophisticated, smart people. But there are people who who are just absolutely confident that they know what ought to be, right? But they're unwilling to roll up their sleeves and be a solution and kind of make it be. Because, and I can identify with this. This is true for all of us. It's just easier to do nothing, right? And complain about everything. And if you want to do that, that's fine. But if you are a Jesus follower, not a Christian that believes stuff that never, translates into any behavior, but if you are trying to actively follow Jesus, we do not have this option. And our network of churches and the people who are involved in what we're doing around the country and the world, we have rejected this option. And I hope you have as well. But it's tempting. I know it's tempting. It's tempting because of this word right here, awareness. Awareness. Now, some of you are old enough to remember, you can identify with some of what I'm about to say, and some of this goes way back beyond any of our times, but once upon a time, did you know that people they were only aware of what was happening in their community? They had no idea what was going on anywhere else in the world. You know that. People were only aware of what they saw or what the people around them saw. The natural disasters, the only natural disasters they responded to or knew about were the ones that they experienced. They weren't even aware of wars in other parts of the world. The only wars they were worried about, the only poverty they were worried about, the only illness they were worried about was the illness, the wars, the poverty that they experienced or that they could see or that people that they knew about. We, on the other hand, and this is part of the problem, right? We, on the other hand, we're aware of everything, everywhere, all at the same time. And it is overwhelming. And it's partly our fault. It's partly our fault because, we've never met, but you're not really all that interested in good news. We're far more interested in bad news. I was a journalism major at Georgia State University, and Dr. Davis told us over and over and over, he said, students, remember, nobody cares about how many Amtrak trains arrive safely. They want to know about the one that did it, right? So we hyper-focus on the negative. We hyper-focus on the problems. We hyper-focus on the dissension and the disruptions. We hyper-focus on the exceptions. That's just human nature. That's not going to change. In fact, it is so much human nature that some of you, and I get this too, some of you have decided, you know what, I'm just going to quit watching and I'm going to quit listening. I'm just going to tune it all out because unawareness is bliss. You're this way because I would say to you, hey, did you hear about the such and such? Like, no. I'm like, what? Like, I don't watch the news, I don't listen to the news, I just tuned it all out. Unawareness is bliss, but as a Jesus follower, honestly, I don't blame you. Unawareness is bliss, but as a Jesus follower, that really is a swing and a miss because I'm not bothered by the problems I don't know about. I'm not emotionally engaged in human suffering I haven't heard about. I'm not inspired to do anything about the people who are struggling in ways that maybe I could do something about. So if I don't know about it, I don't feel the pressure. And if I don't know about it, I don't feel the tension. And if we don't know about it, we can just go on our merry way and just live in our little bubbles as the bubbles that we try to create. And we know it's out there somewhere, but I just need to tune it out. And I understand tuning it out every once in a while. And I certainly understand tuning it out for a season because you have so much going on. But we cannot shut it all out. And we can't take it all on. And we can't do nothing and complain about everything because we're Jesus followers. And this is amazing. And we talk about this all the time. In fact, every once in a while I get an email, Andy, all you talk about is love. I'm like, that's not all I talk about, but I'm glad we talk about it enough that you think that's all we talk about. Our response to human suffering and our response to the needs around us has been prescribed to us. We don't get to make up a solution or a response. It's been prescribed to us and it's been modeled for us by our Savior. So we don't really get to decide. Now, if you're not a Christian or a religious person, I'm not telling you what to do. I have no authority to tell you what to do. If you don't share the same worldview, then, this is just stuff to consider. If you feel any pressure for me to act or do something, I apologize. This isn't directed at you. And if you, and I hope this isn't the case, but if you are content to just be a believer, you just believe all the right things so you go to heaven when you die. That's kind of the version of Christianity you grew up on. If you're just a believer, if you're just a Christian, then you do whatever you want to do. Respond however you want to respond. But the moment you decide, we sing the song, I'm going to follow Jesus. I'm not just going to believe things. I'm not just going to get my theology straight. I'm going to follow Jesus. The moment you decide to become a follower, you don't have options in certain areas because Jesus directly addressed certain things. And in this case, he has prescribed to us what we are to do, and he modeled for us what it looks like. In fact, if you follow Jesus, through the Gospels, any of the Gospels, you bump into a fascinating pattern. In fact, for some people, it's a disturbing pattern. And here's what I mean by that Jesus, throughout the Gospels, met immediate needs. Jesus, my servant is sick. Hey, you guys, I'll be right there. I'm going to go with this guy, check out his servant. Okay, we had a plan. I know we had a plan, but hey, he's got an immediate need. Let's go deal with that. Jesus, my son falls into the fire. It's like something takes over his body. It's like Jesus, hey, I'll be right with you. I need to go with this guy, right? Jesus, I have had this issue my whole life, this disease my whole life, and I've spent all my money on physicians and they can't help me. Okay, let's just stop right here for a second. I want to deal with this particular woman in this particular moment. That he met immediate needs. He intervened in emergencies. I mean, we've talked about this one. It's one of my favorite because it's so convicting to me. He's on his way to Jerusalem, his date with destiny to be arrested and die for the sins of the world. He goes through Jericho, and he's on his way out of Jericho, and he hears somebody going, son of David, And he stops. What's that voice? And they're like, don't worry about him. He's been here forever. His name is Bartimaeus. He'll be fine. No, let's stop. And Jesus stops, pauses on his way to the most important thing he's going to do, his most important appointment. This is what Jesus did. He stopped and he met immediate needs. But did you know what he did not do? And maybe this will disturb you enough to get you to read the Gospels. Do you know what he didn't do? Jesus didn't permanently solve any of his society's problems. None. In fact, the Pharisees, teachers of the law, they kept trying to drag him in to systems issues. Let's fix the system, address the system. They're wrong. What about Rome? He refused to engage in debates about how to fix the system. In fact, he refused to engage in debates about how to expel the occupiers, the Roman Empire. He refused to. And instead, he did something that was more fundamental, more important, and it intersects with what we are called to do as his followers. And please do not hear me discounting the importance of solving society's problems. Absolutely important. But Jesus came to do something more important, more fundamental, and it is part of what we have been called to do as well. Do you know what he did? He addressed the root problem of all societies' problems. He addressed the root condition, the root problem of the human condition. Not just for his nation, not just for his community, but for the whole world. So one day he's teaching, and he says, let me explain why things are the way they are. For out of the heart come evil thoughts that translate into evil deeds. Out of the heart comes murder, thoughts of murder, anger, the venom that spirals up to the point that people do things they didn't mean to do, and they hurt people they didn't mean to hurt, and they hit people they're sorry that they hit. Out of the heart comes adultery, divided families, kids growing up without a mom in the home or the dad in the home, lying, generations of lying. Out of the heart comes sexual immorality, sexual addiction, sexual abuse. Out of the heart comes these things that destroy people's lives and rip societies apart. Out of the heart comes theft, blue collar, white collar, the stealing of ideas, the stealing of credit, the stealing of someone's future, the stealing of someone's ability to grow up in a home with both of their parents. He says, out of the heart comes all of these things. Out of the heart comes false testimony and slander, or Twitter for short. Out of the heart, right? He said, the problem isn't your system. The problem isn't your form of government. The problem isn't the occupiers. The fundamental problem is the heart of mankind, of the human race. And he knew what we know, but it's so easy to forget. He knew that society's problems stem from our sinful, selfish, self-centered, appetite-driven heart. And you know this, no system of government, no party platform can solve those things, can solve that thing. They don't even, look, government, and I'm all for government, and government has an unenviable job, right? The government can't even address the fundamental issue that creates the problems and the loss and the lack and the pain and the sorrow and the deprivation experienced by so many people in our culture and all around the world. There are no perfect solutions to problems that involve people, because people are involved in both the problems and the solutions. The necessary but unenviable role of government is to establish how low we can go. That's what government does, and that's what government has to do. Government is given by God to protect us from ourselves and to protect us from each other, to not so much reward what is done that's good, but to punish evil. The government basically sets up guardrails against our selfishness to keep us again from hurting ourselves and hurting others. But meanwhile, what Jesus did was so different. And what Jesus did is what we are, to the best of our ability in the 21st century, to be about. Jesus introduced not a system of government or a different way of doing things or a different set of laws. Jesus established and introduced a different way of living life. An upside down, others first, race to the back of the line, mutual submission approach to living. Originally, in the first century, it was referred to as the way, because it was a way that was contrary to human nature. And it was fueled, as we talk about all the time, it was fueled by a single, forever relevant command that if we ever embraced it, it would change everything regardless of how things change. To simply love others as he loved us. Again, we don't get to decide what love looks like. He defined it and modeled it for us. To love others as he loved us. It was simple. It was brilliant. And do you know what it does? And we should tease this out sometime when we have more time. This simple command, the new covenant command that Jesus gave his apostles sitting around the table that last Passover, it bridges our differences, as we're going to see. It bridges our dissimilar backgrounds. It bridges the gap between our dissimilar experiences, the way that we experience life, the way that we've grown up. It bridges the gap, honestly, between our disagreements about how things should be done, about how problems should be solved. Because as we are different and as we see the world in a different place, when we embrace the new covenant command of Jesus, in the midst of our differences, in the midst of our disagreements, I'm gonna figure out a way to put you first, even if I disagree. And I'm gonna figure out a way to bear your burden while we try to navigate the issues that are so complex in our world. I love the fact, Sandra and I were talking about this, I love the fact, and this is, again, it's so significant, and you just read right past it when you read the Gospels. I love the fact that Jesus' last act of service, his final act of service for his apostles before he was arrested and crucified, was that he washed their feet. And here's why it's so significant. He washed their feet even though they were about to get dirty again, probably within the hour, which was his point. And immediately after washing their feet, I mean, and again, it's hard to picture. These gentlemen, I mean, I bet nobody's saying a word, right? Jesus, this takes a long time to wash 12 pairs of feet. And they're sitting there in silence and they're watching him take these hands. They've seen what he's capable of with these hands. And he's washing their feet. And then he puts on his rabbi's robe and he sits back down in his place of authority at the table. And he says this to them, and he says this to you, and he says this to me, and he says this to all of us. He says, now that I, your Lord and your teacher, now that I, the most important person in the room and the most important person you're ever gonna meet, the most powerful person in the room, the person that's holding all the cards, now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet, even though they're going to get dirty again. And then he says, I have just now in this moment set for you an example that you should not believe, not think about, not read about, not go, that you should do as I, here it is again, have done. This is the new covenant command. You are to love as I have loved you. You are to do for others as I have done for you. This isn't about simply believing right. This is about doing right, and I've set the pattern. I am the model, and I want you to do for others, even to the point of washing one another's feet, even to the point of meeting needs that are gonna need to be met again the next day. These are our marching orders. Washing their feet did not solve their problem. Washing their feet simply addressed their current need. Don't miss this. And this is at the epicenter of our faith. It's at the epicenter of our gospel. It's at the epicenter of what changes a culture and a society and a family and a relationship in the world. Commanding them to do the lowliest thing for one another, commanding them to wash one another's feet, ensure their differences would not divide them, because you cannot wash feet from a distance. One of the things we've said, and I've repeated it several times, I don't want you to miss this, it's so important, especially when things are the way they are in our country and in the world. The further you are from a problem, the simpler the solution appears to be. This is why you sit at home and watch your television and you're thinking, if I was the president, if I was a senator, if I was him, if I was a general, if I was there, I don't know you, but you have no idea what you're talking about, okay? And neither do I. Because the further you are away from a problem, the simpler the solution appears to be. And Jesus, in his brilliance, says to these men that are going to carry they're going to be stewards of the gospel. He says to them, you cannot be divided, and you must serve each other at the most menial, lowly level, because it will keep you from being divided, because you can't wash feet from a distance. And it won't allow you to get so separated that you're sure what the other person should do, but you're not in their lives, because the closer we get, and this is one of the reasons we want you to serve during this season of Be Rich, the closer we get to each other, the closer we get to people who aren't like us, the closer we get to people who don't experience the world that we experience it, the closer we get to other people, the more we understand their current reality and the more they understand ours. And then there's a big, giant group. Oh, Oh, you know what oh means? We talked about this a few weeks ago. Oh means I didn't know. This whole time I thought you. This whole time I thought you. This whole time I just assumed that. This whole time I just assumed that. This whole time I thought, why don't they just? And now I understand why. And the whole time I thought, why doesn't he just? And oh. And you have the oh moment when there's no distance, and Jesus says, I don't want you to wash each other's feet because you can't find somebody to wash your feet. I don't want you to wash your feet because it's going to be a permanent fix to the problem. I just want you to stay so close to each other that with your differences, there is no division. And the closer we get to each other and the people in the community and the people in the world, the easier it is to understand and take into consideration their current reality. And these guys, they got the message, right? I mean, into the first century, Greeks, Romans, people around the Mediterranean bases are beginning to embrace this new ethic, the new marching orders of Jesus. And the world began to change because hearts began to change. When you race to the back of the line instead of the front of the line, something happens on the inside of you. When you decide to wash the feet of people who are nothing like you, something happens on the inside of you. When you decide to close the gap and close the distance, you learn. And when you learn, you change. And you may never be able to share in their experience. You may not even want to share in their experience, but it marks you. And you're less critical, and you're less cynical, and you're less judgmental, and you're less sure that you have all the answers. Because your heart and my heart are equally corrupt. And Jesus says the way forward isn't to believe differently. The way forward is to serve differently. You bridge the gap. The first century, second century, third century, culture began to change. It became a safer place. It became a safer place for women, for children, for slaves, and for the poor. So, as tempting as it is, let's not shut it all out. And let's not try to take it all on. Jesus did not lead us into either of those ditches. He has asked us to do for others at whatever level we can, simply, in some way, in some form, in some expression, what he has done for us, individually and collectively. So, be rich is this simple. Let's just do what we can do. And let's do what we can do now. And let's do what we can do together. That's why we do Be Rich. Now, if this is your first year with us, I'm going to give you a 3.5-minute explanation of what this is and how it works. Every year, we bring all of our Atlanta area churches together and all of our network churches together and anybody in the country that wants to participate to do corporately what we're doing individually, hopefully all year long, which is simply to give, to serve, and to love in Jesus' name. This is our opportunity to remind the world and to remind the people in our communities that they matter to God, that everybody matters to God, whether God matters to them or not. And the reason we call it Be Rich, which bothers some people, but that's okay, and it causes people to look up, especially if you're talking about being rich in a big mega church. It's like, wow. In fact, when you got here today, you're like, I knew it, okay? You're just going to take notes and go back and tell your friends, right? So glad you're here. Anyway, it's because the Apostle Paul is writing to Timothy, who he hoped would one day maybe take his place in the first century, young Timothy. And he says to Timothy, okay, Timothy, when you're visiting these churches and when you're with these new Gentile believers, make sure you remember to command those who are rich in this present world to do good, and here's our phrase, and to be rich. Tell the rich people to be rich. Tell the rich people to act rich. Tell the rich people to behave as if they're rich. You don't need to be embarrassed because it's not yours anyway. If you have somebody that manages your 401k, they do not feel guilty. They feel responsible. You are managing what God has allowed you to manage. You do not need to feel guilty, but you do need to feel responsible. That's the appropriate feeling or emotion of a steward. Tell those who are rich in this present world to do good, to be rich. And how are we supposed to be rich? In good deeds and to be generous and willing to share. And the truth is, as we've talked about so many times through the years, most of us are rich in this present world, not in your present neighborhood, not in your present community, maybe, but in this present world, most of us are rich. So we should be willing to be generous and willing to share. And that's what we're about to do together. Now, if you're part of one of the network churches that's participating in this year's Be Rich campaign, we are so thrilled that you're partnering with us again, or maybe partnering with us for the first time. And at this time, your pastor is going to come up and tell you what your church has in store for your community. Okay, back to us. Now, sorry, because we got a lot of people that are participating. It's so fun. This is our 15th year to do Be Rich. And for the past 14 years, here's what you've done, just to brag on you just a little bit. This is amazing. You have served in our Atlanta area churches and in our network churches. You have served over 500,000 community service volunteer hours. That is amazing. You should give yourself a hand for that. That's incredible, yes. And you have given away almost $60 million. I know, that's incredible. So this year, and this year's Be Rich campaign, there are going to be about 76 churches in 20 different states, 5 different countries, which is a lot of fun this year, which represents about 77,000 people that are going to participate. Now, so one of the things we decided years ago when we started our organization, we wanted to be partners and not pioneers. So what we do is we find the best nonprofit organizations in our communities and we partner with them. So we don't start a food bank, we didn't start a clothes closet, we didn't start a bunch of stuff. We said, hey, who's already knocking it out of the park, faith-based or non-faith-based? We don't care. If they're serving the community and helping people, we want to help them. So through the years in the Atlanta area, we've established 29 what we call intersect partners. And these intersect partners are groups or nonprofits we work with all year long, but especially in this season. And these partners address things such as, and this is just a short list, food insecurity, foster care, medical care, housing, and education, just among other things. In addition, we have 12 international partners that we've pioneered and partner with through an organization called Global X that's part of our network of churches. Now, here's how it works. For the past several months, our staff on each of our campuses in the Atlanta area specifically have gone out and they've looked for the best charities in our communities, and they've gone to the best charities in our community, nonprofits in our communities, and they've asked 2 questions. They've said, what would make a big difference for you? Now, one of the reasons we love doing Be Rich is these organizations aren't coming to us asking for money. We're going to them. We're saying, look, you don't need to ask us. We know you're doing a good job. What would make a big difference for you? And number 2, what would help you make a big difference for the people that you're serving? So we vetted several $1 million worth of projects like we do every year. But it's important to know that Be Rich, we never set a financial goal. We set a goal, but it's not a financial goal. Our goal is simply 100% participation. We want everybody to participate. We were asking 100% of you to participate, and then we're going to give away 100% of what you give. There's no shipping, there's no handling costs, there's no administration fees, and the reason is this, because those of you who give consistently to one of our local churches on the app, or you give online, or you send checks, however you give, because of your consistent giving throughout the year, and we don't even talk about it, especially during COVID, we just didn't bring it up because there was so much job loss and it just felt weird to say, hey, make sure you give to the church. You have been so consistent in your financial generosity to our church. It allows us to make a big difference and make big gifts to our community. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And here's the best news of all. After 14 years of doing this, there is still not a price increase or an adjustment for inflation. We're asking everyone who can, even if it's a stretch and even if you can do more, we're asking everyone who can, and feel free to do more, to give a one-time gift of, let's just say it all together, $39.95. That's right. Now, yesterday, Sandra and I were driving home from somewhere, and she looked down on her phone and she had a message from Tan. Now, a lot of you know Tan. Tan's one of our fabulous worship leaders. And Tan is out of town this weekend with her mom, but Tan knew we were doing Be Rich today, kicking it off today. So she calls Sandra. She says, Sandra, is it still $39.95? I'm about to make my Be Rich donation. I want to make sure I got it right. And I was so tempted to say, well, for Tan, for you, it's $49.95. But anyway, I didn't do that. So I'm just thrilled that so many people are thinking ahead. So $39.95, and here's the thing. If everybody watching today, if everybody at all of our Atlanta area churches, and those of you who are outside the Atlanta area who are watching, if you will participate today at the level of $39.95, we will today raise about $2.3 million. That'd be fun to do that in a day, wouldn't it? That'd be amazing. This will cover 49 really big projects for our intersect partners. But as always, we went ahead and vetted another $2.5 million worth of projects because you generally oversubscribe what we ask you to do. But I'm always going to ask everybody to participate at a level critical that most people can participate, because 100% participation in this to me is more important than the number of dollars that we raise. And here's a sample of the kinds of things that these fabulous nonprofit organizations do day in, day out, week in and week out. There's foster family support. There's resources for families who have children with cancer. A lot of you have participated in Lighthouse retreats, so they're a part of this. Emergency assistance for the homeless, border stations to rescue girls from trafficking, an organization we've partnered with internationally for a long time. Medical care for low-income families and the homeless. Job training, which is a big deal. Supplies and staff support for underfunded schools, especially elementary and middle schools throughout the Atlanta area. Sustainability projects. This is a really big deal. The organizations that we partner with, they're super smart, and they're constantly looking for ways to generate income as a nonprofit. But if you've ever started up a company or started up a small organization or even a home business, you know it takes capital to get started. So we say to these organizations, you've got an idea that would generate income for your organization. Let us help fund it, because by funding that, we ultimately fund you long-term. Then there's, we also fund operating costs for local nonprofits. People, and you can understand this because you feel this way. When you give money to a charity or you give money to a nonprofit, you want that money to go directly to helping the people that organization helps. But they have staff, they have overhead, they have rent. So we come in behind them and say, we understand that. So let us take care of some operating costs so you can use more of the money you've raised to go directly to the folks that you're serving. Additional staff positions, that's fun. Technology solutions, which are expensive but are critical to efficient operations. So we fund those things as well. So all that to say, all of these projects and the projects like them, they are game changers. They're game changers for these organizations, and they're life changers for the people that these organizations serve. So Jesus was so clear about this, circling back around to where we began. And if you think about what we talked about last week as we wrapped up our series on integrity, if you missed that, I hope you'll go back and listen, because it kind of teases up for what we're doing for the next few weeks. But Jesus was so clear about this, that devotion to God is the best demonstration, or devotion to God is best demonstrated and authenticated, not by our church attendance or our prayers or how much scripture we've memorized, and I've memorized a boatload of it. He said, your love for me, through Jesus he would say, your love for me is best demonstrated by how well and how consistently you love one another and love the people I love. Extravagant generosity towards people is the appropriate, it's the perfect, it's the fine-tuned, it's the synced up with, it's the inline response to God's extravagant generosity and love for us. No strings attached generosity rippled through the Roman Empire and began to change culture. And I hope that our no strings attached generosity will continue to make a difference in our community as well. So once again, all together, let's show our communities that our churches aren't just about sermons and songs, all right? And this year, we've made it easier than ever as you leave at all of our campuses. As you leave, there'll be some green balloons, red balloons. The green balloons, if you have cash or check, and go to the green balloons. If you have red balloons, we're going to put this on the screen. You don't need to remember it. Red balloons, if you have cash or credit card, or credit or a debit card. Or from the comfort of your seat or from the comfort of home, we're going to put QR codes up on all of our screens, and they're in the hallways. They're all over the place. If you just take your phone, go to camera, do not take a picture of the QR code. Just take your phone. I know, I did that, we all did that earlier. I was like, got a picture of it. That's fantastic. That's not how it works, okay? I have a lot of QR code pictures in my phone. Okay. Just take your phone, go to your camera, and just aim it at the QR code, and you will be able to give from where you're seated or wherever you are in the world. So, having said all that, on your mark, get set. I forgot one thing. So, turned out Garrett had a bad case of croup, and he's okay. Because you were just sitting here all day going, but what happened to your son, right? So on your mark, get set. Let's be rich in good deeds. Let's be generous. Let's be willing to share, and we will see you next time. Take off.